Welcome back to Edwin Eisendrath's It's the Democracy, Stupid on WCPT 820.
All right, everybody, come on in. It was a great treat to be able to do this, to join Ahmed Baba. You guys all know him. Come on in. I see you're coming in. Thank you. Ahmed is, of course, a journalist and a political analyst. He publishes Ahmed Baba News, which I think some of you are watching this on right now. Yes, I see those hearts. That's great. Um, uh, and publishing, as I said the last time we talked, publishing on Substack means writing and doing video and doing all kinds of other things. So it's a full service media operation in, I think we called it last time, the truth to power beat.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
good to talk to you again.
Good to talk to you too. I'm really glad we're doing this live to see you all coming in. Welcome. I see some familiar faces coming my usual scheduled lives.
Yep.
Hello. Welcome.
And I just should say, for those of you who are hearing this, talking about scheduled lives, was a conversation we are having Friday. It will air again Saturday on my radio show on WCPT in Chicago. So if you're on the radio, this background stuff, not important to you. We'll get to the meat in a second. All right, so I'm Edwin Eisendrath. I host It's the Democracy, Stupid, both on Substack and on Lincoln Square, and it's the name of my radio show on WCPT in Chicago, because it is the democracy these days, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Let's just go. Let me ask you this. I want to start, I guess, last weekend was Memorial Day. Last I checked, Americans, who fought and died for our country didn't check a partisan box before they did that. And when they jumped in a foxhole with their neighbor, they didn't ask, like, what party are you from? But Donald Trump sent out a message on Memorial Day. Now it's a week later and it's still bothering me, and I wonder if you read it and what you thought about that and because we're going to move to talk about our 250th birthday. But if he can't get through one Memorial Day, I don't know. So, like, what did you think about that?
No, I'm glad you start with this because I really think it's worth noting and kind of emphasizing the pure depravity of Trump. Like, he keeps stooping to these lows and insulting dumbocrats on Memorial Day and not specifying lawmakers, generalizing effectively an entire group of people who affiliate with this, who definitely died. There are many Democrats who died for America and fought in these wars. And really, it's just, when I see these things, and then I saw another thing that was notable about it is I saw Fox News read the post as if it was a normal post when they did their broadcast. And it's like, for me, it was just another incident where there is this normalization of just a desecration of the office, a daily desecration of the office, normalized here by Trump enablers. And it just, the president's supposed to be the best of us, not the absolute worst. And every day, a totally innocuous, totally random day where he could have just, like, done something nice, another holiday, he could have been like, hey, let me actually just rise above the fray here. And instead, he chose once again to lean on his worst impulses. It's disgusting.
Does he have other impulses?
It's a good question, because I don't think he has any.
So what we're seeing are all bad ones, for sure. So, yeah, right. So I raise that because now he wants to be the master of ceremonies for our 250th birthday.
Yeah.
And let's be clear. This is not the 250th birthday of the United States. The Constitution and the creation of this nation didn't happen for another, it happened in 1789, not 1776. 1776 was the anniversary of our independence. And it was the anniversary of telling the world that all people are created equal and have rights. And this administration seems determined to erase the idea of rights and the idea of equality.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on. I mean, what he's doing, and that's why it's so depressing that he's the one that helms this 250 anniversary, that he's the one in office, because it could have been an opportunity to take stock of all the progress we've made, to take stock of the fact that we started, and the founders did not abolish slavery at the founding, and we had a really flawed beginning, and that we've made gains, and instead we're marking this with a backlash and an eroding the fundamental foundational principles that the founders did. They created a framework for us to pursue our freedom, as flawed as they were. and we've made a lot of progress. And instead, like, we've talked about in our previous conversation, just this attack on the federal workforce, which ended up harming Black unemployment, the attack on
Mhm.
DEI, the attack on fundamental civil rights. It's just he's very clearly representing the antithesis of what not only the founders believed, but of every civil rights era, the what LBJ, what the people in the best moments of our history embodied. And he's really just it sucks that we have the worst president in history, in my opinion, helming the 250 celebration, while he acts like he's America first, but it's all about him, and he's eroding our principles here, man. And it's like it's about him and his birthday and putting his face on the $250 rand a new $250 bill, I guess now he wants to put his face on.
Right. I
Like,
mean, you're absolutely right that he's the wrong guy to talk about our history. He's the wrong guy to celebrate the progress we've made, but he's also incapable of showcasing the fabulous, diverse, interesting, fun, brilliant country that we now are, right? And I know with sadness that it has to happen and complete happiness that it's happening, that all these artists who signed up to celebrate our 250th are saying, "Wait a minute, what? I thought this was the nonpartisan thing that Congress created. That's
yeah.
not what this is? This is some Trump party?" And they're saying, "No, not doing it."
Yeah, no, they're saying no, not doing it, and it's the right approach because and I'm glad you talk about the diversity and then like the beauty of America because like you're right, he's the wrong person to talk about it because he's been trying to erase that history of that progress,
Yeah.
and he's part of this attack, this assault on multiculturalism generally. We're the most successful, if not the only, like major multicultural democracy that exists, where it's like the whole premise was this blend of religions and ideas and people and backgrounds, and then their whole assault with Vance with his blood and soil speech. Trump also, when King Charles visited, talked about the British blood running through, like all this ethno nationalist eugenics stuff that's running through this rhetoric, this white nationalism that they're trying to embody transnationally, with the Atlantic and the Reform Party in the UK use similar language, where it's just like we are a multicultural society and there's so much to celebrate. We
Mhm.
like, especially, I live in New York, you're in Chicago, right? And it's like there's havens of of multiculturalism. We can get food from anywhere. We can engage with people of all backgrounds. And instead they want to assault that. And the interesting thing is they want the benefits of the multiculturalism without it. They'll go to a Trump rally where he's saying get them all out, and then afterwards they'll go to a Mexican restaurant, right? Like it's just unbelievable, man.
I changed my language, and I want to get your thoughts on this. Um, I don't talk about a multiculturalism anymore,
Hmm.
because American culture
Yes,
American
that's
culture is this vast, wonderful, diverse place. It has all these different strands in it, all these different traditions in it, all these different flavors in it, you know? So I just think, wow, American culture, if we talk about multiculturalism, they can say, yeah, well, it's a buffet and I can take these three items and leave the others aside. And that is just not so. That's not who we are. We are all of this. Right? And
yes.
then you go back to, you know, I'm gonna go to a tradition that's not my own, to Saint Paul, who says, like, if you get rid of the hands, what's the stomach gonna do? Right? You got like, we all have to be part of this tradition for it to be the culture that we are.
Yeah, honestly, I'm really glad you frame it that way because you're right. It is American culture. It that and
And it
that's
always
what
has
it
been.
always has been, and
Always
that's what they're attacking. It's not it's not just multiculturalism generally. It's American culture at its fundamental essence. They're lying about the history of America and acting as if it's this white Christian nation and that's all it's ever been. When in reality, as we know, this country was built by slaves, and the black community especially is just such a big impact on music and culture and
enormous
everything that's happened,
contributions
and
in every aspect of our lives,
every
in
aspect of our
science, in art,
lives.
in entertainment, in literature, in politics, in every aspect of American life. Right.
Exactly, and yet they want to diminish that and act like
Diminish it.
and diminish it entirely and act as if it was not a fundamental foundation of America. And I think you're right. It's an attack on
Yeah,
American culture. It is
yeah.
it is fundamentally anti-American.
And by the way, when the rest of us got here, there were already people here, right?
There was
And
Native
so, like,
Americans.
America was multicultural from the moment somebody from Europe
Yeah.
put a foot on this continent.
Yes, exactly. And then exactly, and then and other immigrants came in, and then they were persecuted at first. I mean, whiteness has really expanded beyond what it initially was. There was Irish and the Italians that were initially faced discrimination. So it's like we continue to welcome people here, and it's a positive benefit. And that's why I think Democrats need to do more is speak to the benefits of this American culture, of this immigrant welcoming culture where undocumented immigrants pay $100 billion in taxes annually without getting benefits, right? They increase the economy. They help. They commit crimes at lower rates than even native born Americans. Like all the lies about immigrants are false.
Which
And
is
I just think like you're this. I really agree with your framing here that it's fundamentally American culture that Donald Trump is assaulting, and it's unfortunate that he's doing it and now trying to act as if he's celebrating the 250 years.
right. That's exactly right. Okay, so that's our framework. That's who we know. You and I know who we are, right? And
Yeah.
they don't. But together we're a lot stronger. Donald Trump decided to not pay attention to anybody else, not ask Congress that represents the rest of us, but decide all by himself to go to war in Iran.
Mhm.
Um, and when you hear him play like "Let's make a deal," you know, wait, we have peace. No, I'm bombing them. We have peace. No, I'm bombing them. Wait, we have a deal. The Straits of Hormuz are open. No, they're not. Well, I control the Straits of Hormuz, but Iran has to open it, right? Earlier in his presidency, people might have said, well, this is a genius at strategic ambivalence, leaving himself room to move. But I think we're not at that place anymore. I think America now looks at this and just sees a guy who has no idea what to do.
No, that's spot on. I mean, they try to claim, oh, it's madman theory. Well, if there's no theory,
It's
it's,
just
you're just left with a madman, right? Like, what are you doing? And it's like it's this whiplash that he's created, this back and forth where he's negotiating with the voices in his own head, and it's like, where does that left us right now? The deal that's on the table is effectively, which it wouldn't return to a pre-war because that status quo is ruined now because of the attack, but it's to solve a problem that was created by the war itself, opening the Strait of Hormuz, which was open on February 27th, the day before the attacks. And now, even if
and
they
by the way,
were,
Iran did not have a nuclear weapon either.
and Iran didn't have a nuclear weapon either. And it's like, and they're not even talking about enrichment or missile capability in these talks. This is a from what I saw in Axios, a deal potentially to return to the table to start talks, which were already happening when he launched the initial strikes. So now they weren't. I'm seeing Scott Jennings and some Republicans trying to claim victory here as if this is like a great deal. It's like, even if the strait was reopened now, the damage from it, as many economists have talked about, will be long lasting. It's going to take a long time for some of the people of the Gulf nations who stopped production to revamp up some of the oil production. Oil prices are going to remain high for quite a while. And on the other side of that, you have a more extreme Iran. You have who's realized their leverage, and they have a stronger deterrent than a nuclear weapon, which is to short circuit the global economy whenever they want. So we're left in a more dangerous world
Yeah,
because
we
of
handed them
this.
this new weapon, right? So there's no circumstance where the United States ends this where we are better off than we were before. There is no circumstance where Iran, um, where the regime in Iran isn't um, more difficult than before. I mean, the damage they took militarily is huge, right? But they're there, they're entrenched. We lost the opportunity at regime change, which we might have had when the old man died, but we killed him instead and made a martyr. Um, and or Israel killed him. It's hard to know. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, that part of the world is complicated. And I worked there for many years. It's a complicated part of the world. And you have a simpleton in the White House who just sees the world as, let's see, there's them and there's me, and I can push them around. And that's not how
Yes.
the world works. And the world, I mean, Americans, including the Republican Party, hasn't figured out how to stand up to this man, but the world has. And
Hmm.
and America's worse for it.
Yeah, no, spot on. And I'm glad you bring up his simpleton nature because he lacks any intellectual curiosity. And when you don't have that, you can't understand the enemy. How can you negotiate or deal in war if you don't understand the fundamental mechanics of the Iranian regime? He thought he could just go in there and just Venezuela it? And then it's like, no, you took out Khamenei, and even if you took out the son, you have the IRGC, which is now significantly more empowered. And they're decentralized structure for the most part at this point. So if you take out some generals here, you've got others that'll take power. They have a structure in place, so you can't just wipe out. It's a hydra. You
It's
can't
a
just wipe
huge
it out.
country. They've proven, I mean, they lost, what, 1,000,000 people fighting Iraq. They've proven that they can take pain, to keep their regime alive. Um, and a little bit of history would have helped, right? But instead, he tore up the deal that kept them from getting a nuclear weapon. Um, now Iran is a troublesome country for sure, and dangerous, but there are ways of dealing with it, and there are ways of dealing with it, and this one is not helped. This one's proven to be a failure. But for these
100%.
guys on the right, the only thing that matters to them is identifying an enemy. It doesn't matter if they're effective in beating the enemy. It doesn't, because their politics is all about identity, which brings us back to where we were before. Like, you're either in my tribe or you're not. And if I can just be mad at somebody outside of it, I can keep you voting for me. The problem is that he's so incompetent as a president that, inside the tent or outside the tent, you're paying high gas prices. Inside the tent or outside the tent, you're
Mm.
paying more for food, or you can't find a rental apartment that you like, or job market is a pain. All of this is true because he's a terrible president.
No, exactly, yes, and it's like when at this point, his lies are so see-through that you can't create enemies when everyone sees through what you're talking about. You try to make Iran enemy, which of course Iran is a repressive regime that most Americans would agree should
We
fall or
don't like
change
him.
place, or we don't
Sure.
like them, right? But at the same time, we all know why we're here is because Trump infamously tore up the Iran deal. And the JCPOA, Trump's own State Department in 2018, they said that they were complying with it. All of this enriched uranium they have now is post-Iran deal ending.
All on
So
Trump's
it's
watch.
all on Trump's
All
watch. So Trump created this problem, and then he keeps and then now he wants to and then you're not articulating what the goal is or even directly outlining who the enemy actually is. When you're just going all over the place. One second, oh, it's a regime change. We got a new regime. We're going to work with this new regime. Next second is we don't know who the regime is. We actually don't want to work with them. Next second, we want the Strait of Hormuz open. Oh, but we don't need the Strait of Hormuz. And then they lie and say, oh, we actually eroded all their missile capability. We find out 30 of the 33 missile sites across the Strait of Hormuz along it. Iran has access to them. They have access to 70% of the mobile missile capability, mobile launchers around the country. Like, it's just I can't like, I've tried to be, okay, let me see if there's any objective way. Let me take out my personal feelings. If there's any way that this war that we're up, that we've gained anything. And I cannot for the life of me think of a single way in which America has gained other than the gains at the gas prices for the oil companies.
right. So Trump is gonna have to agree to a bad deal because he put the country in a bad place, and he's gonna try and have to sell the country a bad deal. And he's a good salesman, but I think that those days are over. One more thing about taking it personally, I worked in that part of the world for a long time. I have a particular fondness for the country of Oman.
Mm.
It is the most beautiful country in the Gulf. It's peaceful. It's friendly. And Donald Trump said he was going to bomb it this week. They don't get in line, we'll have to bomb them. And I am just personally sick of my president thinking the solution to every problem is either locking people up or bombing them or shooting them in the knees, right? This is
Yeah.
his answer to everything. Gas prices are high, let's go shoot somebody. I mean, right? This is not worthy of our nation.
No, it's not worthy of our nation. And then the other day, yeah, he's talking about, oh, we'll just blow them up like Oman. Like, come on. Now Oman's catching strays. It's just, you're right. This is not the way to look at it. He has this might makes right worldview where in the first term he was more restricted because he had some sane people around him. And now, his whims are totally unleashed.
Well,
Where we
you
have,
know this better than anybody because you were one of the first guys who outed Project 2025, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
they were working to be ready in the second term to try and destroy our democracy.
Exactly. And now they've got what they wanted. And the thing is, that the first term, the guardrails and the people in power that prevented his worst impulses, they actually saved him politically, but then he used that to say, to blame. Oh, I didn't get to do all my agenda because of the deep state. Well, now he's surrounded by loyalists. Everyone knows it's his show, and there's no fallback here. Everyone knows that this is Donald Trump's unmitigated id. It's his ego unleashed, and Americans can see right through it. And he brags about the bad things he's
And he
doing.
does, yeah.
He
Let's talk
the
about one of them.
tariffs. Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
so you and I have been talking about how bad he is at governing and how it impacts people's lives. And but the other tax on Americans is corruption. Because every time they spend money on the reflecting pool in a no bid contract that's way overpriced, right, to line a friend's pocket, that money comes from you and me. Anytime that Donald Trump negotiates with himself and reaches his hand into the treasury and takes $2 billion for a slush fund, that money comes from you and me. The corruption is not just disgusting on its own, it's an extra tax on all of us. And I want to ask you this because, like, I was a Chicago alderman and a bunch of my colleagues went to jail. They went to jail for they took $1,700 to approve
Mhm.
a stop sign, that they shouldn't have sold a stop sign for, right, for $1,700. But people were disgusted that a politician would line their own pocket at their own expense, even if it was like $1,700. This guy has taken billions for himself and his friends. Where is America's sense of, do they hate you and me so much, the right wing, that they're willing to overlook that kind of graft?
I think not. I think it's beginning to pierce through. I'm starting to see more and more. Not, and it's not. And I think the indicators are, the influencers are lagging indicator. The MAGA media people, it's because their audience was already starting to move and they needed to speak. It's all they move with the market. So I think people are starting to see, because you're right. It is the most transparent grift in American history. It's a robbery what he's doing. He effectively tried to rob the IRS of $10 billion. And then when that seemed, I guess, a little bit too much, he was like, okay, well, I'll settle with myself for a $1.776 billion robbery that I'm going to give to my cronies. On the flip side of that, you have him making billions of dollars in crypto. You have the sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East investing in World Liberty Financial, his crypto company. You have loans being given to Donald Trump Jr. Run fund, $620 million loan from the government given to Donald Trump Jr. affiliated company. And then you have 3,600, like, this is one of the craziest things to me.
The
The
trades?
$3,600 trades in Q1, which is like, if talk to any stock expert, they're like, that's a lot of trades for anyone. And then he owned Nvidia. And while he's greenlighting chip sales to China, he owns Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman, and he owns defense contractors while he's waging a war that benefits and enriches those defense contractors. It is insane. And then, of course, we don't even know who is grifting on these insider trades, where minutes before these announcements, these fake deal announcements,
Yeah.
there are millions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of oil futures that flood the markets. So it's like, I think we're going to be astounded by the amount of grift that are still yet to be uncovered in the future.
Yeah, I think we're getting to the point where, I mean, it's all came such fire hose of things that Americans aren't used to, that we're beginning only now to be able to put our arms around the big picture of the whole thing. Because the grift that you just talked about, the economic pilfering of our country, is one piece of it. The destruction of the Justice Department, also corrupt, to make it his enforcement mechanism. This is the stuff that you see in dictatorships all over the world. They exist to keep the boss in power, to punish his enemies, and to line his pocket. And we're seeing him do that in our government. So not that hard to explain. We elected a guy through our democratic process that he doesn't believe in. And he said, I'm going to use that power. I'm going to spend, before I get there, I'm going to have this project. We're going to figure out how we can use the power that these fools give me to make
Mhm.
sure they don't have any power ever again, and I get all the benefit. And that's what we've seen in our government. And again, coming to our 250th birthday, that is just beyond appalling.
It really
So
is
whether we have a
beyond appalling.
251st birthday is an open question.
Yeah, no, it is an open question, and that's the right way to put it, because what it is not only he's being corrupt himself. He's raising prices on Americans almost unilaterally with his
Mhm.
moves. His big beautiful bill was one of the largest, probably the largest wealth transfer in American history
Yeah.
upward. And then you have yeah, like people can see through that. They can see him unilaterally raising their prices while giving tax cuts to the rich, while focusing on a ballroom that's also potentially going to cost over $1 billion for taxpayers. And they see that, and he wants to put his face on a $250 bill. Okay, well, you want to be the face of inflation? Let's create a
That's a
larger
good line.
bill.
I'm gonna take that line. May I use that? That's a great line. It's a great line.
Yeah,
Although
yeah.
you know what? I would give him the $250 bill and his face on it if it had bars over it.
Yeah, that would be I would buy that one.
Yeah.
I would spend more than 250 on that to hang it
Right.
up on my wall.
It's like I think he should build the arch so that we could retire the deficit by offering every American for $10 a swing at a sledgehammer to take it down, and you keep going until it's gone, and we'll have no federal deficit.
Yes, you don't need a public works program. You actually people will pay.
We'll
People
pay.
will pay to come and tear down the ballroom and tear down the arch. That's how you raise revenue. That's
Yep.
the way to do it.
Yeah. Well, so we've talked about, like, who we are and who Donald Trump is, and that they're just not in sync as we go to our next birthday. I wanted to talk to you about the Supreme Court too. That's gonna wait for another time because the destruction of the Voting Rights Act is very Trumpian, but it's a slightly different path to the same terrible end. But I'm optimistic. I don't know if you are, and I'm going to take a couple minutes off it because while he's consolidated his power in the last year, we've also learned that we have some powers too. Like, tell me your thoughts about that.
Yeah, and you know me because of our last conversation. I'm optimist, and I have been feeling a lot better. This is not the Trump of 2025. This is an America that sees through the nonsense. The disapproval numbers are insane. He's lost so much ground. He's erased all the gains he's made with Hispanics and the black community. The
Mhm.
black community was very marginal, but a race and then some. He's historically unpopular. Young people we see through that. Independent voters, his approvals are in the 20s. I wouldn't be surprised if we see one or two polls have him breach 30, and he's in 29, 28 before the midterms even.
Oh, I
And
hope
then
I don't want
2020,
the rats.
2028, we might see W. Bush numbers for this guy. And again, I think a lot of the stuff, it's fear mongering. I agree he's going to attempt to do some interference in the midterms, but I
Mhm.
think the way he's behaving, he's very clearly resigned to the fact that his presidency is about to effectively be over after the midterms. A president that cared about the midterms wouldn't say he didn't care about the financial situation
Right?
of Americans, and the fact he's so focused. Ezra Klein actually made this point in a pod I was listening to right before this, where he was saying like the fact that he's so focused on Republicans and the primaries shows that he actually just wants to control the Republican Party and doesn't really care about like the outcome, right? Like, and I agree with that. I think he's trying to focus on what will happen after he's out of office, and he'd rather just play power broker. And I really think that the American people are going to reject him pretty resoundingly
Yeah, I think
this
the
year, in
Republican Party is
spite
gonna be
of the
dead because of
gerrymandering.
this. I mean, shrinking already to a very nasty core, and that's not where America is, and America's gonna reject it. Um, uh, I agree with you, and I think the outcome of this isn't just beating Trumpism, it is to go back to where you and I began, a different vision of America, a sort of a more realistic view of how we got to be the people we are, and the fabulous things we can all be together. And I think that's where we're going. I think we are going to be in a much better place after we prove to the world that we Americans can stand down threats to democracy at home as well as abroad.
Yeah, that's so well said, and I totally agree. I think maybe Americans need to see this ugly face of authoritarianism to recognize how fragile democracy is, so that we can rebuild it from here and have a more healing approach moving forward. Like we got voices like James Tallarico in Texas talking about this moral, unifying message. We have so many great leaders in the Democratic Party, and in 2028, I think that is going to be a message that I think people are exhausted by this,
I
and we
well,
want to
and
we want
Ken
to come to a
Paxton,
better
one of the
place.
worst men in America, is the Republican nominee for Senate in Texas, and he says, "I'm gonna win because I'm running against a vegan," because that's how he goes. I thought about that, and James Tallarico is a Texas vegan, and what does that mean? It means he allows a beefsteak tomato on his hamburger.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right, it's great to talk to you. I always enjoy our conversation, so thank you so much for your time today.
of course, and thank you, and we're gonna do this again, of course.
I hope
I
so.
always enjoy. You have so many insights. You have so many brilliant takes. So I always love talking to you, brother.
You're the best. Thank you.